Bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal that's appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act, notably consents and minor variances amongst others. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I'll be chairing this hearing today. With me are my fellow panel members, Mr. Scott Hindle, Ms. Julia Markovich, Mr. Colin White, and Ms. Kathleen Willis. Also this evening, we have the Deputy Secretary Treasurer with us, Mr. Matthew Garnett, who may be on the phone. Some folks are having some trouble with connectivity. So Matthew is joining us using the telephone and for as long as he can at this point. We also have two committee coordinators, and with Ms. Mandy Nguyen, and Ms. Emily Byers. And Ms. Byers, who do have electricity tonight and can help us. And I have got to tell you, and the panel members, so we have a pre-meet just before we get in this, and I just need to explain this because our pre-meet ended and literally 30 seconds later, our whole internet here went down. So, so if it goes down, I'm going to have to ask Mr. Hindle to step in for me if that happens again. It hasn't happened all day, but it of course had to happen. Exactly. And now I've got problems with my video, but it seems to correct itself if I just turn it on and off. Okay. All right. So with that, you may have noticed this hearing is being video conferenced through YouTube, and you can access either a version of tonight's video or the agenda through our Committee of Adjustment website. Also noticed, I don't know if folks have had a chance to go, but our website actually has a little more information on applications than we did in the past. So if you haven't visited the Committee of Adjustment website in a little while, then I'd invite you to do that because we are trying to improve our communications on the website, and staff has been dutifully doing that over the last several weeks. So, so before we start, there are a number of comments we have to make about really what the jurisdiction is for this committee. And so the mandate is fairly narrow. We can't deal with things that are outside of the application. So if it's a minor variance application, the application deals with maybe lot width and lot area. We can't deal with design issues, for example, that might have to do with the massing or the height or any of that. So we can't deal with those kinds of issues if it's not part of the application. The applications, of course, have to really reflect where it is that there is relief required from the zoning bylaws. So if it's not in the application, there may be an issue, and that can be discussed, but typically all of the minor variances required for the development are caught on the application. There's a lot of pre-consultation that happens to make sure that some of that works out. So noise, pollution, and property maintenance are other areas that we can't talk about. Neither can we talk about property values or illegal construction. We also will not entertain any adverse comments about anybody participating in these proceedings, not the applicant, owner, staff, anybody. So please be respectful at all times. And finally, if we do find that greater relief or a minor variance may be missing, or any other pertinent piece of information, if that happens and the notice to the public was not correct in that regard, then we need to recirculate the application to make those corrections and recirculate. So when that happens, we will definitely adjourn it and allow for all of that to happen. Also, as part of the statutory requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property, and typically we ask for a hard copy statutory declaration. But since the beginning of pandemic, we've been able to pivot and do this verbally. So at the beginning of each application that's being heard, we will ask for a sworn affirmation, or an affirmation, or swearing that on your declaration about that sign posting. So Typically, we're not too worried about losing quorum, but today's a special day. I think a lot of people may have been affected by some loss of power. So we're all five of us are here. So we're going to hope that nothing goes wrong. Even if you lose me, you'll still have quorum. There won't be any issues in that regard. So if for whatever reason the worst happens, and we can't in fact maintain quorum, then we will simply move the remainder of the applications that haven't been heard to the very next meeting. So in terms of the process, then we have an agenda. We typically follow that agenda unless there's a presentation required, which we tend to put towards at the end. And we do have an application for that on Mary A that we will ask for presentation. So that one will be held to a little bit later in the evening. And typically what we do is if we don't ask for a presentation, we can ask questions, and that's what the panel does. Is they will ask us some questions for clarification if there's been any questions that have come up in the review of the material. If we don't need to ask any, if there's no questions, that's fine. We'll go right to the public portion. I do have a speakers list. Some items have names, some don't. In all cases, everyone will get a chance to speak to an item, regardless of whether or not you're on that speakers list. So that opportunity will happen. Then we close that public portion. The committee then gets a chance to deliberate on any new information or to revisit some of the information that we've already acquired. And then we go to a decision. So when we go to a decision, obviously, what we can do is that we can grant your application, or the applicant, we can deny the applications, we can adjourn, as I said, if we find there's a need to. We can reserve on an application for which there is maybe a lot of new information verbally given to us by members of the community or anyone else who addresses the committee. And then in those cases, what we tend to do is reserve, and then we adjourn this hearing. We reconvene same evening and make a decision, but go back through the information, discuss it at greater length, and then make a decision. So in all cases, once the committee has made a decision, there is a written decision, a formal written decision. And this, of course, is for the either being granted or denied within 10 days of the hearing. With the adoption of Provincial Bill 23, that's now in full force and effect, decisions of the Committee of Adjustment continue to be appealable within 20 days, the date of that written decision, but only by specific parties. So either the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or public body that has an interest in the matter. And a specified person does not include an individual or a community association. So I just wanted to make sure that that's very clear. So I don't believe we have any minutes to adopt, but I just want to ask, is there any declarations of conflict of interest from anybody on the call? So for the record, there's no conflict of interest declarations for this meeting for either our panel or any of the other panels. And then I guess we can go right to the adjournment requests at this point. And I'm going to start with adjournment number or application number 2, which is for 578 Wayville. I'm looking for a Mr. Caleb Miller, who is the agent on the application. Is Mr. Miller with us? Mr. Miller. Hello. I can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, good. Didn't say anything there. Yeah, all right. So is there a problem with our audio here? And good evening, Mr. Chown. I'm taking you're supporting Mr. Miller on this.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. So there's a request for adjournment. Mr. Miller, would you just give us maybe very briefly an overview of the reason for the adjournment?
After submitting the application originally, we received staff comments that the measurements we were taking were to be measured from the edges of the eaves and not the wall portions of the buildings. This therefore requires more relief than we were originally seeking, and we are looking to reapply and have that recirculated.
All right. So which So which variants are we talking about in this case that you would need to revise?
Both, Ms. Chair. The detached garage interior distance from the detached garage to the interior side yard, as well as the distance between the principal building and any other building on the property.
Okay, so in that case, we do need a recirculation. So I think sine die might be an option. Has that been discussed with you, Mr. Miller?
City staff have indicated that that is their request, and we have no opposition to a sine die adjournment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. White, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on, and I'm wondering if we can deal with this at the next hearing if necessary. I noticed that there's a question of separation between the main building and the detached garage, and I'm wondering if building code services might have any issue with respect to the separation requirements under the building code. I didn't see any comments received from them, and I just wonder if maybe that should be addressed so nothing is missed in terms of the building code services input into this later on.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Glazero, is that something that you can chase down for us to ensure that it's added to our report for the next time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did discuss this with Building Code Services. The applicant did communicate with them, and based on the previous or the current variances being required, they didn't have an issue with it, but I'll have the applicant contact Building Code Services again and just confirm that with the reduction in the setback and the separation that there's no issue. Excellent.
Thank you very much. Mr. White, is that hand still up from the last question, or we got another one?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Thank you for that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on the question for adjournment? Okay, I'm going to go out to the public. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against a proposal to adjourn this application sine die? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So members of the committee, all those in favor? All right, for the record, the decision is to adjourn sine die, and that's unanimous. So thank you, Mr. Miller, and thank you, Mr. Chan. All right, I think we're seeing you again, so I won't say good evening because I think we're seeing you again at some point. Okay, all right, so the next application then that we're looking at is for adjournment number 9, which is for 1486 baseline. Looking for agent Kubiseski.
Madam Chair, I do not see the agent on the call. I've tried reaching out to her, so maybe we can step it down for a couple minutes.
Let's do that. We will step this one down. Okay, so the next one up for adjournment is number 15 for 136 and 138 Acacia. Looking for Ms. Soar. And I guess, Ms. Glazero, if you can come back.
Stuart is hoping to get onto a plane to Toronto this evening, so I am standing in for her.
All right, thank you, and all the best to Ms. Sewer in terms of getting on a plane safely to Toronto. All right, so Ms. Glazero, we're looking at a further adjournment, and I'm not a huge fan of continuous adjournments on an application, but I feel the end is coming. So in terms of getting clarity on all this, so we have both, I guess there's 2 parties requesting adjournment. We have a request for adjournment from the Community Association because they would like time to further digest the legal opinion that's been provided. And we also have one from you, Ms. Glazero, in order to allow staff, and maybe if you want to explain it yourself as to the request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pardon me. So After we received the lengthier letter from the applicant's lawyer, we passed it on to our representative from legal services, and they were in mediation for most of last week. And so between when we received the information from the lawyer and my report submission deadline, there was just not enough time for legal services to review everything. And we're looking at reviewing provisions under the 1960 Planning Act, amendments in 1970, really to determine if the lawyer's position, the agent's lawyer's position is correct, that the titles have not merged. So given the nature of the file, it's important for us to get our position absolutely correct before we move forward. So yeah, I apologize to the agent that legal wasn't able to provide a response. So, but yeah.
All right. So I think everyone is interested in ensuring that we do get that fulsome review. So the date that we've been talking about is May 3rd at this point. Is that sufficient time, Ms. Glazero? What's the signal you're getting from legal services?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know what they said that they would review it as soon as they could. If it's May 3rd, and this is, I don't know how much review I'll be able to do prior to that, as I'm off for the week before. Certainly I'll poke my head in if I need to do significant revisions, but I'm always hesitant to not give us enough time in case.
So we can go to the next meeting. We can go to the May 17th.
That would be my preference, just so that I can see this through to the end. If that's okay with Mr. Chown.
Mr. Chown, need your input.
Madam Chair, I'll be perfectly frank. I was expecting a 2-week adjournment, not a 6-week adjournment. The legal department has had this material for a while. I think they need a deadline to work to. And if we give them a deadline of 2 weeks, I would expect them to complete their review and provide their feedback to staff in time. I don't see any reason to delay this for 6 weeks when the legal department has had this material for more than a week already. I just think that's, with respect, I just don't think that's fair to our client.
Yeah, so the constraint actually isn't with legal services on this one, Mr. Chown. It's our constraint at the committee. The meeting on the 19th of April is jam-packed. So we already have upwards of 20 items. So it's, to me, a file of this size, I'd rather deal with it correctly. And that's why we were proposing the 3rd of May, because we just can't put this one on the April 19th agenda.
I understand staff's position, and hopefully they can encourage legal to get information and opinion to them before she takes vacation, so that we could target that first meeting in May, rather than, as I say, delaying this for a month and a half just isn't fair to our client.
Okay, so I'm going to propose the May 3rd, Ms. Glazero. We're going to push legal to do it before you leave. So maybe that'd be great. The planning report will be early. I'm just saying. But I want to hear from the rest of the panel members. Anybody have an issue with the May 3rd date? Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Willis.
I don't have a problem with the May 3rd date. I do have a question for staff, just to make sure I understand this completely. The investigation into the legal opinion will clarify which form of application. They're both consent, whether it's going to be a lot line adjustment or a consent to sever, if I understand correctly. Regardless of what is agreed to, does that change the planning department's position, do you think? Does anything turn on what the result is once the legal department has determined the status of the application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there's a potential for our opinion to change, yeah, the Heritage Conservation District Plan does not speak to lot line adjustments. So it'd be a lot more straightforward of an application if the lots have not merged on title and the applicant was simply seeking a lot line adjustment. the Heritage Conservation District guidelines speak to severances, and specifically that existing larger lots should be preserved. So we are first determining whether the two lots have merged on title, and still working with Heritage Services as well to come to the final determination on whether this is one lot or two under the HCD plan, based on the map that was provided. There's some discrepancy between the survey form and the map, which we can account for. We've had lengthy discussions with Heritage planning staff. Ashley Katarba and I have discussed the Heritage Conservation District plan, the map, and the survey form. Ultimately, we need to determine whether the lots have merged on title before we know how to proceed with respect to the HCD plan.
And that would be, just to follow up, that would be, even though the form of development in the end, whichever route is chosen would be the same, could potentially change the recommendation of staff. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's correct.
And isn't a lot line adjustment also a severance application?
So we've discussed this, and so I don't know that it's not quite the same. If the lots haven't merged on title, the owner could convey 138 Acacia to someone else, and then it would be under very clear separate ownership, and then they could come in for a lot line adjustment. But in terms of creating a new lot out of one, and subdividing one lot into two, no, they're separate applications.
Well, this is complicated for my little brain. Thank you.
So we have a number of issues that we'll have to deal with, because the other issue is depending on whether or not it becomes a lot line adjustment. Is there a notice issue? So let's come back with the results of the analysis that's being done. We can talk about whether or not recirculation for notice purposes is required. I'll be frank right up front. I don't think so. I think there's been a lot of parties at the table. I think there's been a lot of communication on this, but I'll want to hear from the rest of the panel members at that particular point in time, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But let's get that answer, and then we'll move on. So May 3rd is our date. Hopefully we'll have a lot of clarity and we'll be able to deal with the application on that evening. Any further questions from the panel at this point? All right, so I'm going to go out to not a speakers list, but I'm just going to make a call out there just generally, because I see Ms. Peterson's hand's been up. So from the public, is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against the adjournment request to May 3rd? So Ms. Peterson, would you like to speak to the adjournment request? Have we lost Ms. Peterson?
No, you haven't lost me. You haven't
Okay.
lost me. Okay. Yes, I'd like to speak to this. We've been working on this closely for some time now, but we're really thrown back when leading up to this meeting, we had not been circulated with the legal opinion. Now we got it from a neighbor who had obtained a copy of it, and it is very complex. There is a good number of attachments to it, and this is a very serious issue for us. So when the legal opinion and the city can deal with it, the thing is that we very much want to be in a position to also deal with it, and we have to know enough, and then be in a position, if we think it's necessary, to ourselves engage legal counsel on this. And this is a very important issue to the community, and I know that you've heard from a number of neighbors. They've certainly been in contact with me. So when I've discussed it with a number of them, and we would like to adjourn this sine die, so that we don't have to keep coming back, and we're finally given an opportunity, once we know what's really at play here, to have the opportunity for a fair amount of time, as I say, to engage legal counsel if we feel that's necessary. And May 17th, yes, May 3rd is just way too soon to contemplate doing something like that. May 17th, I don't know, but certainly we would like it sine die, so we don't have to worry about this. We've really been sort of kept out of the picture to a certain extent, and once we're sort of fully into the picture, we'd really like to do a good job.
All right, thank you for your comments, Ms. Peterson. I think everyone has been trying to work very hard towards resolving all of this. And so can you tell me why then you would not have asked for a sine die earlier than this then? Like, it seems very late in the discussion process to be requesting sine die.
Well, well, you know, I'll tell you the truth. We did some time ago ask for an adjournment, and it wasn't until very recently that that we understood what sine die means. And that's why, you know, I didn't know it would be helpful to get back just before this meeting to make it clear that we feel we need that kind of time to do a good job. We just didn't understand what sine die really meant.
All right, thank you, Ms. Peterson. Any questions from the panel for Ms. Peterson? All right, Mr. Chan, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate we shouldn't get into a debate back and forth, but just a couple of things. I would object strenuously to an adjournment sine die because, with all due respect, if the legal department doesn't have a deadline to work to, you get moved to the bottom of the pile. And so an adjournment sine die will take the onus off of them to actually deal with this matter sooner than later. And secondly, I would suggest to the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association that if they think they need a legal opinion on this matter, they've got 4 weeks to get a legal opinion. That's plenty of time, certainly. So I would appreciate it if you would stay with the position that you've taken already of adjourning this to May the 3rd. Hopefully by then we'll have all the information we need to deal with this issue, and we can decide then whether you can actually deal with the applications that evening or whether a lot addition would require further notice. But I'd like to have that conversation once we know what we're dealing with. And the sooner we can find that out, the better for everybody on this call.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chan. So now, Ms. Peterson, you've had your opportunity. I'm going to make a call out to anybody else in the audience. I see Michelle.
Hi.
Can I have I do need your name and your municipal address, if you could, please.
Yes, my name is Michelle Heyman, and I live at 255 Soper Place, K1M 2J2.
Okay, so Michelle, I don't see your name on.
I had sent a request earlier today. I also, I'm the VP for Heritage of Rockcliffe Park Residents Association.
Okay, that's fine. So you've given us the information. That's great. So don't worry about it.
Okay.
Please go ahead. So this is on the adjournment request to May 3rd.
Yes, it's my understanding that the owner of 136 has indicated to various individuals that there is no development that is planned to take place on this anytime soon. Therefore, I don't understand what the rush is to have this happen in 4 weeks, and why this can't be sine die.
Okay,
So my understanding is that this was just done for investment purposes and is just being held in place in case it's needed, is what was communicated to us by the owner. If no development is taking place, I would like to understand what the huge rush is.
so when so Mr. Chan has already given one reason being that there's a requirement to give deadlines in order to deal with things, so keep things moving. So that makes some sense for sure. And then there's, you know, the fact that they have made an application, they've come before the committee. The committee has heard this several times. So there's really there's really a need for the committee to also deal with this issue, right? So the idea is we've been working towards trying to sort of break down all the different issues. We're finally going to come to a point where we have all of the information in front of us. If we wait too long, we're going to wind up having to revisit all of that because it'll be too long since we've had a chance to deal with it. And as you know, I mean, the committee deals with a lot of applications, and we've spent a lot of time on this particular item so far. And so I think what we're hearing from staff is we're close. We're very close. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to conclude our consideration of this application and come to a decision as quickly as possible. It just makes sense for us. It's more efficient, and so I think that's sort of the rationale from the committee's side. Is it just is good process to continue with what we're doing, regardless of the the investment or whatever it is that the applicant would have. The committee does have a need to move through our items on our agendas. So with that, does the panel have any questions or any comments to make for our speaker before I move on to the next speaker on the adjournment request? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right, so I wasn't sure if it's Ms. Colt or Mr. McCartney that was first. So go with Ms. Colt.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Colt, and I'm a neighbor. I live at 440 Maple Lane, and I'm here to support the RPRA's request for adjournment. That's my statement.
Adjournment. So what adjournment? So there's a couple of adjournments that have been talked about.
Right. I agree with Susan Peterson that we need more time, that they obviously need more time to look at the details.
Okay, so you're supporting her signing her proposal to go sine die.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Just want to make sure for the record that we have what your intent is and that it's clear. So there is a record that goes on. So just thank you for providing that clarification. Okay. Mr. McCartney.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Just support the adjournment as well, but I'm actually not available on the 3rd of May. I would like to be available for the next meeting if possible. So I would certainly support a delay if we can till the 17th. Or potentially long to further evaluate this application. I didn't say already, but I live 2 doors down at 120 Acacia. So just to clarify. Thank you.
All right. So Mr. McCartney, are you on my list? Yeah. Thought I saw your name. Yes. So we do have your address and that. Okay, as well. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Any questions for either of those speakers before we make a decision? All right, so is there anyone else in the audience before I'm finished that would like to speak to an adjournment proposal for May 3rd? That's still the proposal, so anybody want to speak to that? Okay, all right, members of the panel, and Mr. Chown, so we've heard back to May 17th. Would that be like, so there's a couple of things, couple of advantages to May 17th. It provides a little bit more time. It's not sine die. And it allows.
I don't
Sorry,
know.
can I ask somebody to put themselves on mute, please? Because we're hearing other conversations come through. So please put your mics on mute. So that's a consideration now. It's not to go sine die, because I think we've put too much effort into this and we really need the application to be heard and to be dealt with. So it comes down to May 3rd or May 17th. May 17th has the advantage that we have Mr. McCartney back and we have Ms. Glazero back. Sorry, somebody's got their microphone. I think, just make sure you're on mute, folks, please. So Mr. Chown, I guess I'm back to you. Just can you tell us if it's impossible for you to go to the May 17th? Like I need to understand the real barriers for you.
Well, I guess we're in your hands, Madam Chair. I'm out of town on the Monday
Would
and
you,
Tuesday.
sorry, my apologies, Mr. Chown, because I'm having trouble hearing because I'm hearing, so is it Mr. Luigi Lugripo, could you please keep your mic on mute, please? Because it's interfering with the ability to hear other speakers. So my apologies, Mr. Chown. Could you start again? Because I kind of missed that.
So, Madam Chair, we're in your hands. I'm out of town for a conference on Monday and Tuesday that week. Unless we have another storm like today, with any luck, I'll be back in time. I think you're still meeting on Wednesday evenings for the month of May.
Yes, we are.
Um,
Yes, we are.
Not my first choice, obviously. As I said, initially I was hoping for 2 weeks. Now we're talking about 6. I'll just hope that staff can encourage the legal department to get an opinion back to all of us sooner than that. So we all have a chance to digest it, including the representatives of the Rockcliffe Park Community Association. But I'm not going to object to an adjournment for another 2 weeks in order for Mr. McCartney to be able to attend it. I don't think that would be reasonable on my part.
All right. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chown. Just from the members of
Oh,
the
you can
panel,
speak.
so please put your mic on. Thank you. So to the panel members, I guess the question is, does anybody have any concerns about going to May 17th as a proposal to bring this item back? Ms. Willis, you look like you want to say something, so go ahead, please.
You don't usually have to ask me for my opinion. Excuse me. I just think that it's a fairly straightforward question that's taking some time. I think if it turns out that it's coming back on May 3rd and the answer isn't sufficient, we can delay it again. But I was, I would fight for the 3rd if Mr. Chown wasn't somewhat willing to go to the 17th. But I think it's not that big a deal. My preference would be to go to the 3rd.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you for that, Ms. Willis. All right. So I think what the May 17th date does is I think it gives the community association ample time to get a lawyer, get the opinion into that lawyer's hands, to get the opinion back, and then to discuss amongst yourself, how you're interpreting that opinion and what you want to do with that information. So I still think May 3rd would have been sufficient time. So I'd agree with Mr. Chown when he made that comment, but I think based on the fact that we have a few people who are away and who have been active in discussing this particular application, so reluctant's would in proposing then May 17th on this, and that's going to be our vote. So whoever's got their hand up, the public portion has been closed for this item already on the question. So I'd like to go to a vote now with the panel members. All those in favor of a May 17th adjournment? All right. For the record, that is unanimous. And so we will see everyone back ready with, and I'm really truly hoping that you're going to share as well your legal opinion. So so that we're not into a fight on May 17th about whose lawyer said what, and that information wasn't made available. The expectation is let's all share our information. Let's all digest that information and come back ready on the 17th to discuss all of the varying elements. And we know that Ms. Glazero is going to distill all of that and come back in a staff report with the discussion that's required to give clarity. Ms. Glazero is also going to ask whether or not and maybe this is for Mr. Garnett more than anything else. Mr. Garnett, if you're still on the phone with us, and I think you are, would it be appropriate to ask for legal services to attend? All right, I don't think I'm getting an answer. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If legal staff are available, I think it would be appropriate to extend that invitation.
All right, thank you. I think that would be probably a wise thing to do, just because of the complexity of the material that has been brought forward, and that I'm sure the community association is going to get their own legal opinion. And so let's get legal services so that we can talk, that we have answers to any of the issues that may come up as part of that discussion. So, all right. With that, thank you everyone for coming forward and for discussing the adjournment. We will see everybody back in 6 weeks. So thank you and good luck to you. And like I said, remember to share everybody. I think that's just helpful for everybody. Okay, all right, that takes us back to number 9. So coordinators, do we have Ms. Kubiseski?
Yes, we do on the phone.
All right, excellent. Okay. Ms. Kubiseski, do you hear me?
Hi there. Yep.
Okay, so we
Yes, I
are
hear you.
talking about an adjournment on your file, sine die?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Okay. And-
Yep. So we're just, I received comments from the planning department on March 31st, and it's kind of my opinion. If we don't have the planning department's approval, we won't have yours. So we just need some time to sort of revise our plans to match up with what the planning department is asking of us, which is fine. And we're just hoping to adjourn till April 19th, if that works for everybody.
Okay, so that agenda is packed, it's done. We can't add anything to that agenda.
Okay.
So, so the best we can do for you is May 3rd. Miss Gatchin, looking for Miss Gatchin. Can you come forward?
Yes.
Hello. Don't believe we've met yet, but we'll get a chance to chat a little bit after the hearing. We'll chat with you. But I did want to get your opinion on that May 3rd date. Then, based on your request for an adjournment, would you see that as sufficient time? There's also, I thought this was sine die. Can I get your opinion on that?
I have no objections with the May 3rd date. If I think that would be sufficient time for the revisions to be made. I have no issues with that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So members of the panel, any thoughts, comments on a May 3rd? Yes, Ms. Willis, go ahead, please.
I don't have a problem with May 3rd, but I was going to recommend to the applicant that a more complete justification rationale be provided with the application, where there doesn't seem to be much that gives us the evidence we need to test the variances. And we were very confused about how many units were being built and how many. Anyway, it was not a very complete explanation, and I would request that it be expanded upon.
Right.
All right.
That's not a problem.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So that should form part of the of an added submission to the committee. So if you can get that to us in the next couple of weeks, that would be great, because then we'll get a chance to review that as part of the material that we review just prior to the meeting. So on the 3rd. So okay. I need to make a call out. Is there, I don't think there's any speakers for this item. So is there anybody in the audience who would like to come forward and speak to an adjournment of this application at 1486 Baseline to May 3rd? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, for the record, the decision is unanimous and we are adjourning this item to May 3rd. So thank you very much. We'll see you then.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, I see Ms. Pratt has her hand up. Ms. Pratt. All right. I think I'm going to move on to the next application then, which is our normal agenda. And I've got item number 1 that we're going to deal with first. And that one is for 629 Windermere. And we're looking for, again, Mr. Miller, you can come back to us.
Madam Chair, there was an adjournment request on this item as well. Would you like us to speak to that?
Yes, actually, thank you for reminding me, because we did see that, but there was an adjournment request on it. So, and yeah, go ahead, please. It had to do with measurements, if I recall.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the committee coordinator could help by putting up the second last slide in our presentation deck. So the request for an adjournment has been
Sorry.
made by Ms. Gray, who resides at 637 Windermere Avenue, right to the very end of the slide deck, if you can go to the second last slide.
So, Mr. Town, so if we're going to deal with this in the context of hearing the item, I need to do the.
No, I'm speaking only to the adjournment request. I
Okay,
assure you of
all
that.
right. Okay, go ahead.
This is not the slide I'm looking for. It's the figure that actually is being challenged by Ms. Gray. It should be, and maybe
It's the
Mr. Miller
survey
can help me,
plan.
but I thought it was the second last slide in the deck.
Is it the survey plan we're looking for, Mr. Chen?
No,
I'm seeing
No.
slide 16. It's a figure in the cover letter.
slide 16, did you say, Mr. Miller?
I'm seeing slide 16, yes.
Yeah, so keep going. Right to the very end. There we go. Thank you. Whoop. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is an image which is in our cover letter, and Ms. Gray has identified some inconsistencies between setbacks shown on this figure and setbacks shown on the plan of survey that was also filed with the application. Ms. Gray correctly points out that this figure is based on Geo-Ottawa. We, along with other consultants that appear before you and panel one on a regular basis, prepare exhibits based on Geo-Ottawa and what is available to us through Geo-Ottawa. Ms. Gray correctly points out that Geo-Ottawa is not 100% reliable, and that's for two reasons. One is it's based on aerial photography, so there's obviously some distortion when you're working with high altitude aerial photography. And the other is that setbacks are measured to the wall of a building, and these images may include the roof and eaves, which would project beyond the wall. So she correctly points out that the setbacks set out in this figure aren't 100% accurate. We know that. Everybody who uses Geo-Ottawa knows that. We're not relying on those dimensions in presenting our support for the minor variances and meeting the four tests. And in fact, this slide isn't included in Mr. Miller's presentation for you this evening because it's not critical to arguing the four tests. The request for an adjournment wouldn't be of any use to anybody because this information is what it is. It's not like we would come back in 2 weeks with different information. This is the best information or the only information available to us through Geo-Ottawa to give a feel for what the street looks like today and the number of properties that do not conform to the required front yard setback. Is it 100% accurate? No, it's not, but it's the only information we have.
So, Mr. Chown, we're like right with you on that. And it's one of the reasons why we did not call it down for an adjournment, because we do know that to be true. Everything that you're talking about, those, the fact that it's not precise. It's not a precise tool. It's a tool that we all know has a little bit of flex in it, obviously. It's the other slide that I was more interested in. So what we wanted to do was to actually, just clear that up and then hear the application. So you do have, and so we're not, so what I'm going to do is, I think we're going to deal with this application. We're not dealing with an adjournment here. We're dealing with an application. We're just confirming measurements on the application in order to ensure that we in fact can continue moving with this application and hear it. So unless you tell me that throughout, through this, you have identified some deficiencies in your measurements that make, in that case, we're just going to hear the application.
Yeah, for the purposes of the variance that's before you, there's absolutely no issue with the dimensions or the relief being sought. Absolutely. There's no issue with the application before you.
So that's what we thought. We just wanted that on the record, but now I'm going to have to read the staff declaration because that comes before the discussion on the application. So And I
Understood.
don't know if I'm reading to you, Mr. Chan, or Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Mr. Miller. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which it applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either affirm or swear that to be true?
I do, Madam Chair.
Or do you swear or do you affirm?
Sorry, Madam Chair, is there a difference?
Swearing, I think, is a little more on the spiritual side, and affirming is a little more neutral, but it's the same effect.
I swear, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And to be honest, I should probably look up the answer to that question to be absolutely clear. And I might have even called on Mr. Hindle to see whether or not he actually knows the real definition of difference between swearing at and affirmations. I'm sure there's something a lot more eloquent than what I just told you, but in any event, thank you very much for this. Okay, so with that, then back to the application. So I think I've heard from you, Mr. Chown, that you're confirming that in fact, there are not any issues with the measurements. Can we bring up, I'm going to ask the coordinator to bring up that survey plan, because I just want to confirm that. In the presentation, and I saw it, it was the slide right after the one we were just looking at.
Slide 17.
Yes, that one. So when I look at this one and I see what the setbacks are on the properties just next to the subject property, can you confirm to me that these are accurate?
Thanks, Madam Chair. These were conducted by an Ontario land surveyor and are accurate too.
All right. And all right, fine. I just wanted to make sure that we had that on the record. So we're good. So survey plan, no issues with that. It does reflect the existing condition. Great. Okay. So with that, then now we're going into the application. So I'm going to just throw it open to the panel members to ask any questions that they may have. Panel members, what say you on this request to reduce the front yard setback for the construction of a one-story addition? Oh, sorry, one-story, yeah, addition, a covered porch, exactly. Nothing? All right. So I think we're good then. We'll go to the public on this then. So for number one, I don't have anyone. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application for minor variance at 629 Windermere Avenue? Now's your chance. Just raise your hand and we can bring you in. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. So thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Chown.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Okay, so we're on to number 3 at this point. Number 3 is for 4140 Kelly Farm Drive. Ms. Richer is the agent. Do we have Ms. Richer? No, do we have Ms. Richer for this? Sorry, just gonna make sure that that's in fact who I have. Yes. So coordinators, do we have Ms. Richer?
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, I need to read to you as part of the process. So just let me get that wording. Okay. On the sign posting, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was at all times visible and legible? Can you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm just going to, oh, sorry, one more thing. We do have a very minor housekeeping item on the notice. So can you just confirm that in fact we are adding to the zoning identified, it's L think it's L or I.
Aye.
I. It's hard for me sometimes. So
Yeah.
I1E, and we're adding H bracket 15 unbracket, correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay. So now I'm going to open it up to questions from the panel members. Does anyone have any questions on this application? So I take it, Ms. Richard, you're in a site plan process.
That's correct.
Can you tell me where you are in that process?
I believe this is one of the last items that we are dealing with, apart from some traffic issues.
Okay, so it's not, you're far down the doing the circulations and doing the
Yes.
revisions and all
We've
that.
received
Okay.
the second round of comments.
Oh, perfect. Okay, sounds good. All right, I didn't have any other questions. If nobody else does, then we can go to my speakers list. And on this one, there is no one. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application for 40 Kelly Farm Drive? And anybody? No? Okay. So on that then, the question of a vote. So we have nobody come forward. All those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, so that one goes in this time. Okay, so we're on to the next application is number 4. Number 4 is 241 Hillcrest. Thank you. That's actually very helpful. I think that's new from our coordinators, is to put that application up so everybody knows what it is that we're dealing with. So on that one, then I would need I think we're looking at Mr. Liang.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair.
All right, so Mr. Liang, are you just to remind me, you are the owner of the
That's
property?
correct.
All right, so let me just read to you as well, because that's what we need to do about the sign. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the number? I've got to finish.
Jump again.
For the record, I got to finish. So
Okay.
for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time. Over to you.
Affirm.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. No presentation required from you on this one and no housekeeping amendments. So I'm just going to open this up then to the members of the panel. Any questions? So the purpose is to construct a 2nd-story addition over a 1-story. We're not changing the footprint. We're not doing anything new. We're reducing a rear yard setback. That is to regularize. All right. Okay, no questions. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go to the public on it then. I have nobody on my speakers list. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? All right. Not seeing anybody. Mr. Liang, just out of curiosity, did anybody did your neighbors approach you at all on any of this?
So I talked with the Rockcliffe Park Associations. I reached out with them because we're only expanding on an existing 1st floor addition that was not compliant with the existing zoning code. So they were quite happy that we would be just keeping the existing footprint, and we're sticking with all the heritage. There's no issues with that. So I think they're quite happy with the entire plan.
All right, excellent, good, glad to hear it. With that then, I'm going to go to a vote. So members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. So thank you very much, Mr. Liang, and good luck with your project.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, perfect. Number 5 and 6, we have as an agent, Mr. Juday. This is for 1133 Seacourt Avenue. Mr. Juday, are you with us? So far we've been, I don't want to jinx things, but so far so good with our agents and our applicants. Good day, Mr. Juday.
Good day.
All right, need to read to. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted on a property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was at all times visible and legible? Can you either swear or affirm that that was true?
I do confirm that to be true.
All right, so you're affirming?
Yes, I am.
All right, thank you. Okay, so on this one, Ben, we're not asking for a presentation. We have before us, committee members, both a consent application and a minor variance application. The purpose essentially is to develop, was to subdivide a property into 2 parcels for a new semi-detached dwelling with reduced lot widths and areas. So any questions on any of that for Mr. Juday? Any comments, any clarification required? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions coming from the panel. We do have a chance, just so everybody's very clear, we do have a chance to go through these applications in depth. So it's not that we're not interested, it's we already have a lot of information. We've already gone through an awful lot. So I don't want, I know we're going through some things pretty quickly right now, but I just want to make sure people understand that it's, you know, been looked at over time. So, okay. So there's no questions, then I'll go to our speakers list, which I do have. So do we have a Mr. Hay, Brian Hay?
Yes, I'm here, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Hay. So go ahead. You've got 5 minutes.
Oh, well, I don't think I'll take the whole 5, but everyone will be happy to hear that, I think. So as I do want to thank the council for giving me an opportunity to speak. So I am the property owner at 1135 Seacourt. So I'm the immediate neighbor to the applicant. So I just want to start off by saying that in principle, I don't object to the subdivision of the property. However, in practice, I have a few questions or comments that may change it. So, I mean, my main concern is how the new build may cause flooding in my basement. And I'll give some background on that. So years ago, the previous owner at 1133 installed a pipe to redirect the water from his roof away from his house and towards mine. The result of this water being directed at my property resulted in flooding in my basement from excess water. So my aunt, who was the previous owner of my house, brought this problem to his attention. He changed where the pipe was aimed, and then the problem went away. So having looked at the plans of the proposed duplex, there's, I guess, just 2 issues, which I'm worried may cause the same problem as experienced by the previous owner. First is the roof of the proposed duplex. So it's sloped towards my property, where the current dwelling's roof slopes towards the front and backyards. So the new roof line will direct snow, ice, and water towards me. And this excess water could cause flooding in my basement. The second is the building itself, right? So new builds are designed to move water away from the structure. So if water is being moved away from it, this means it's being directed towards me. And so again, concern is that this will cause flooding in my basement. So I mean, if Mr. Jews is able to provide some assurances in writing that this won't be an issue, I mean, I can support the variance. If he can't, I may have to object, just pending any further investigation or even just a discussion with him.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hay. So let me just give you a little bit of comfort on some of those flooding issues. Okay. So as part of approvals for consent applications, we are in a position where we can apply conditions of approval that have to be cleared before there's an opportunity to actually create the lot. One of them is a grading and drainage plan. So that has to be submitted to city staff and reviewed. And the intent, of course, is to ensure that some of the issues that you've just raised are not, in fact, produced as part of that development. So I think I think that captures your concerns. I think that process in itself is aimed at specifically trying to address the issue that you encountered before. Now, that said, people do change their drain pipes on their, or even maybe choose not to put any eaves or those eavesdropping at all on their properties. That's not something we have control over, but certainly it does go through the review for grading and drainage on the property to ensure that there isn't any imposition on next door neighbors.
Okay. Okay, and well, I mean, Mr. Drew's on the phone. Do you mind if I reach out to you if we chat at all?
So Mr. Hay, I don't think we can ask Mr. Jude to give you anything in writing on that.
Right.
But I think
Okay.
having a discussion is great. So Mr. Jude, did you want to comment on that?
Absolutely. I have no problems with meeting in person. Again, now I know where you reside. We can meet in person. We can go from there. I have no problem with that.
Awesome. We won't waste the council's time, but we'll grab a coffee and we'll.
Great. We like when things work out like that. It's terrific.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for that. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Hay?
No, I'm good. Nothing I don't think that we can chat about over Starbucks.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. We have one other speaker on our list, Ms. Carbone from the Heron Park Community Association. Ms. Carbone, are you with us this evening?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Hello. Okay. So go ahead. You've got,
Yes, thank you
got
very
5
much,
minutes as
Madam
well.
Chair. As you said that I'm the president of the Heron Park Community Association, and we've been before the committee a number of times with respect to very similar applications. I've submitted a 24-page presentation, which I hope the committee members have had a chance to review. I want to highlight the key points in that presentation. The last time I addressed the committee, it was for an identical application, and one of the members of the committee indicated that the community's concerns were quote unquote irrelevant. So I took that to heart and I reviewed the official plan. And the first 13 slides of the presentation represents excerpts from the official plan that support our concerns about the resulting development. Slide 3 indicates that, quote, land use direction is both driven by and has an impact on Ottawa's health and the sense of community, which is on page 4. It also states that, quote, for any individual part to be understood, the official plan shall be read as a whole, page 4. Slide 6 indicates or expresses cross-cutting issues that are addressed by the official plan and in other city policy documents, and the need to be read in conjunction with those of other policy documents. So basically, it's a holistic approach. That's on page 12 of the official plan. Slide 7 states that, quote, intensification acknowledges the multiple facets of city building that not only adds people, but considers other components in planning for livable, complete neighborhoods. Page 13 of the official plan. So in the official plan in slides 8 to 13 emphasizes how the built and natural environment can have significant effects on the quality of life and well-being of its residents. They highlight the city's 10-year housing and homelessness plan and how the city continues to see the ongoing erosion of affordable rental stock where people are displaced and not able to afford new rents in redevelopments. So these details, there are more details in the presentation as you are aware because you've reviewed it. So I won't go into those specific details, but also in the presentation, there's evidence of what we're dealing with the aftermath of such approvals. So how identical variances have resulted in semi-detached dwellings with 5 bedrooms, the limit being 4 in a dwelling, rental dwelling, and how they are rented by the room, mimicking a rooming house situation, and the increase in bylaw calls due to property standards, excessive garbage, noise, parking, and rats, all of which speak to quality of life, which is in the official plan. As with other identical applications, and particularly with respect to this agent, we haven't had any communication from the agent with respect to this plan. And our experience as a community association is that the 3 times that we have had communication from similar types of developers with similar applications, what they communicated to us didn't actually occur. So given the known impacts that similar types of development have, and what the impacts have been on our community, and how this application is not keeping within the full intent of the official plan, and would not result in housing that identified as a priority in other City of Ottawa policy documents. You can see where we're going. The HPCA, the Heron Park Community Association, doesn't support this application. We feel that the committee, we hope that the committee looks at the official plan as a whole and doesn't basically put what we would consider more emphasis on a certain aspect of the official plan, which talks about intensification, at the expense of all of the other parts of the official plan that talk about affordability, quality of life, health, livable communities, all of which we know from our experience with identical types of developments have negative impacts on those aspects. So in closing, we're requesting that the committee reject this application and ask that the applicant to consider a more appropriate build form in this location that results in intensification, yet does not produce the downstream negative and long-term effects on the quality of life of the Heron Park residents. So we're feeling that this does not meet the test and the intent that deals with the intent of the official plan. If you look at the official plan from page 1 to page 200, and I can't even remember how many pages are in it, but to take a look at the entire official plan and its intent, not just the section that deals with intensification. This property can be developed. It can be developed to a higher density within its current zoning. It doesn't need to have these variances to do that. And so we're asking the committee to reject this application. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carbone, and thank you for taking the time to go through the official plan and to pick out the policies. I agree with you. The official plan needs to be looked at as a comprehensive document. It does. I won't say more about it than that. So thank you for raising that. So does anybody have any questions for our speaker on that or on the material that she has submitted to the committee? All right, so I don't see any questions. Mr. Hay, I don't know if you're still around, but I just want to mention to you, I had read this, but I just saw it again. Engineering comments were provided that's very clear about surface stormwater runoff, including roof water must be self-contained and directed to the city right away, not onto abutting private properties, as approved by the planning. So there's a very clear focus on that. So hopefully you won't run into those issues at all.
Madam Chair, I did see that. Yes, thank you.
All right.
It's just from previous history that the flooding that was my concern.
Okay. All right. All right. And so for Ms. Carbone then, on her comments, I went back to the planning report. The planning report does clearly identify the designation, though, and the designation is the policies, the development policies that apply. It's an evolving neighborhood overlay, which means that it's signaling a gradual intensification within the area. Zoning bylaw permits semi-detached within this zone, so I'm not seeing any non-compliance with the official plan at this point or with the zoning bylaw. So I know there are other policies that apply, but the designation and what's sort of spelled out in the designation is essentially the way that the zoning bylaw typically is modeled after. And in this case, already, even without any changes to zoning bylaw to reflect the new official plan, there is permission to do this. So okay. Is there anything else on any of either the consent or the minor variance before I go to the public on this? Or sorry, to anybody else in the public on this, because I think Ms. Carbone, you were the last person. So is there anyone else in the audience then that would like to speak to this item, either for or against? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody further. Mr. Jude, you're aware of all of the conditions that have been spelled out?
I am.
All right, okay, so no issues with those. I can go to a vote in that case. We're going to vote on the consent first. So all members, oh, sorry, Mr. Griff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind you, we did clear condition 4 prior to the meeting today with the Forester, so that one can be taken out from.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I did actually have it struck here, but I didn't actually mention it for the record, but that's really important. So we are, the approval, if we have an approval to the consent, will be with the deletion of condition number 4 relating to tree planting plans. Okay, just give me a second. I'll see if I can't fix that. Yeah, all right, seems to come back, thankfully. Okay, on the consent then, members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the consent is unanimously granted. And on our minor variances, all those in favor? We're going to have fairly minor changes here. So all those in favor, sorry, did I catch everybody? Yes. All right. With that, then the minor variance application is also unanimously granted. So thank you, Mr. Jude, and hopefully you and Mr. Hay will have a great coffee together and work out some of those issues. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay. We're going on to item number 7 for 450 Tremblay Road. The agent that I have on file here is Gossin. Ms. Gossin. Do we have the agent coordinators?
Yes, I'm here, Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Good evening.
Yeah, Mr. Gossin. All right. So I do need to read it to you before we get going. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was first posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either affirm or swear that to be true?
I do affirm, yes.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, there are no housekeeping items on this application that are required. We do, I think that's it though. Any questions then from the committee on this application for consent? For 450 Tremblay Road. Mr. White, go ahead, please. Oh, I'm sorry, you're on mute. You're on mute, you're on mute. You're gonna have to start over. Okay.
I just noticed a comment from staff that there's an issue with the elevations that were provided. Not that we're dealing with those at this in this forum, but that the elevation suggests that there may be a requirement for a variance to the height. I just want to ensure that the applicant's aware of that.
All right.
Yes,
So I'm
ma'am.
looking. Yeah, Mr. Grift, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Madam Chair, go ahead.
No, it's if you could answer Mr. White's question, that would be great.
I am aware of that. I received the comment from the staff. He suggested to go for minor variance, or the way it happened that we treated that building as a townhouse instead of semi-detached. I don't know why the architect he used it like this. And my architect, he relied on the what you call it, the table 7, the table 6. Sorry, if you go to the bottom of the bylaw link on Geo Ottawa, so table 6, it mentioned clearly that the maximum building height required is 11 meters. So he relied on those 2 items to put the height of the building on 11, especially it's a 3 stories. It's gonna be kind of hard to put it on 8 meters, especially on the same street. We have buildings that they are 11 meters next to the house, 320, I think, and 322 Tremblay. They are on 11 meters. So it's up to you. I'm in your hand, Madam Chair. Whatever you like me to do, we go variance, or you accept the application.
So from what I can see in this consent application, we don't have a minor variance requirement on the basis of just the consent application itself. If there was a tangible proposal before us, and I didn't believe that was the case at this particular point in time. Are you saying, Mr. Gassin, that you are prepared to go to construction very soon?
Well, we're not going very soon, but we need to know what to do. Just put me on the right track. Should we go for minor variance for the height, or we keep going with the application and consider it as a townhouse? Because as I say on table 6, it mentioned that the height of 11 meters is accepted.
All right, so Mr. Grift, I'm going to need a little bit of clarification from you. So from a lot width and lot to area, no issue, right? So that we're not talking about any of that for minor variance. Okay. So it's only on the basis of what Mr. Gassin would be proposing. What is the height limit right now? Not that it really that matters that much, but what is it?
So thank you, Madam Chair. It's depending on the dwelling type. So he is correct. The townhouse would be permitted to go up to 11 meters. A semi-detached, a single detached are only permitted to go up to 8 meters. So 2 stories. So you would need a review of plans in order to see he's wanting to do a townhouse or a semi-detached. I will maybe just highlight the townhouse. I think there's a minimum of 3 units needed. I'm not sure if there's enough width on that lot to create a townhouse, but that's something that we can discuss further.
So Mr. Gassin, so here's the issue is if you're asking for relief from 8 to 11 on a minor variance, there has to be a fairly compelling reason to do that, right? So you're going to have a lot of planning rationale to do that. So I'm almost of the mind, and I'd love to hear from the rest of my panel members, but you may want to explore then, maybe just adjourn this for some time and explore with Mr. Grift whether or not a townhouse development is feasible on your property. If it is, then you don't want this consent. You will want to do instead, maybe come back with a minor variance. Might even be better depending on what it is that you're proposing. It's all to do with the planning result and how well it fits into the neighborhood and all of that. It may be that if you came back to us with a really good design on a townhouse development, and that needed maybe a lot area and lot width, it's not the end of the world to come to the committee and say, look, I have a really good idea. Here's what I'm proposing. It means that I need further minor variances. Now, in that case, your minor variance wouldn't be for height. It would be possibly for lot area or lot width. It's up to you. It's worth exploring at this point, because like I said, coming back to the committee with a request for a height variance of 3 meters, you better have pretty compelling reasons to do that. You have to have good planning rationale to come back with that proposal.
Okay, because it was a little confusing for us, because as I said, the bylaw link mentioned it's 8 meter. Mr. Griffith is right, but if you go down to the bottom, number 6 says for land within the schedule 342 where a building has a peaked roof having slope 1 and 3 steep, the maximum building height is 11 meters. So that's what confused us. That's why we put it to 11 meters. We thought we were allowed.
Okay.
I don't know what this.
Do you know? So I think more discussion. You may want to have a little bit more discussion with Mr. Griffith about this before we approve this this consent application, because I don't know what you think. So I would propose that we adjourn it for a month and give you a chance to have that discussion. If you come back and say, no, we've talked about it, we've looked at all the options, there would be too many minor variances, don't want to do this, or I've looked at other, other consequences or implications of going with the townhouse over. If that happens, you want to come back to us, then that's fine. You can come back to us and we'll deal with the application the way it is. How's that sound?
That sounds good. Mr. Griffith was very helpful from the beginning. So
Okay.
yeah, maybe I discuss with him what this clause mean, what this table mean exactly. That confused me. And I don't want to put more pressure on my clients too, because they already applied for the permit. Then they're gonna have to withdraw all the drawings and make new drawings and new permit. But let's see if there's a solution in between me and Mr. Griffith. I'll talk to him.
All right. Any comments from the committee on this? Mr. White, I'm not sure you're convinced just by.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a bit confused why the significant difference in building height permitted between the two building formats, but I'll leave that up to the planners of the city to discuss with the applicant.
All right. So I think we're going to go to an adjournment on this then to May 3rd. Do I have anybody on my speakers list for this item? Just let me have a look here. No, I didn't. Oh, yes, I did. Actually, we do have a speaker on this. Do we have a Ms. Marion Murray in the audience?
Madam Chair, I don't see her on the call. If she could raise her hand, I'll bring her in.
Okay. Let's give that a minute then.
Not seeing anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Byers. In which case then we'll just make a call out there on the application. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this application that is for consent at 450 Tremblay Road? We may be looking at and we are looking now at an adjournment on this application to May 3rd. Does anybody want to speak to the committee either about the file, the application, or the adjournment? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So members of the panel, then how about we just go with an adjournment to May 3rd? All those in favor? All right, so for the record, it's unanimous. We are adjourning to May 3rd. The intent being, Mr. Gassin, that you get a chance to explore all of your varying options and talk to your clients about what they may want to still proceed with. And if we're still dealing with the same application in a month's time, so be it. We'll deal with your application.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Mr. Chair.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
You too. So that is May 3rd. Just got to make notes to myself on these applications that are coming back. Okay. So we're on to application number 8 at this point, which is for 236 Woodruff. The agent's name on this one is number 8. Yes, Miss Palani. Do we have Miss Paoloni?
Yes, hi, hello.
Hello. So good evening. I do need to read to you before we go too far on this. And you're the agent, right? You're not a landowner of this property? No?
No, I'm the agent on the file.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
All right, thank you very much. No housekeeping items here on your notice, and we're not requiring a presentation this evening, but so I'm just going to open it up to our panel members. I just want to make a comment. I see that there's a revised report on this from planning. We have had a chance to see the revised report, so so that's all good. So that means that you in fact have the tree report. I think the tree information report was submitted with revised plans. Okay, all right, good, very good. Any questions about the proposal by the members of the panel? All right. So this one is, let me get caught up with my notes just for a minute. Okay. And these, this property does have driveways, I believe, on this, right? Okay.
Existing one, and we're proposing two. Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. If there's no questions from the committee, we can go to the speakers list, which I have no one registered. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this application for consent application for 236 Woodruff Avenue? Not seeing anybody come forward. So Ms. Paoloni, there's quite a few, and let me just fix that video. There are quite a few conditions. One that is being deleted is condition number 5 related to the revised site plan in the TIR. So the committee is aware of that change. So an approval would reflect that.
I do have another comment about one of the conditions before we go to a vote.
Yes, go ahead.
So condition 10 discusses a noise attenuation study. And I'd like to see if the committee is open to changing that to a noise warning on clause registered on title instead of the noise attenuation study. I've had a couple discussions with the planner on file about this. But I know that the noise attenuation study was added to this file due to Woodruff being an arterial road. And I do know that in the past, an application about 3 doors down on the same road with the same severance request had the same noise attenuation study changed to a noise warning clause on title. And I'd like to see if that would be possible for this application as well.
Okay, so Ms. Getchen, I'm going to have you come forward. What are your thoughts on the elimination of condition number 10?
Yes, Madam Chair, I did not support the deletion of this condition because for a number of reasons. The first being that is a mandatory OP requirement per the policy 10.2.1.3A, which requires that new development proposals within 100 meters of arterial roads as identified on Schedule C4 do have a noise study that's completed. Woodruff Avenue is such identified arterial road. And next being that I'm concerned about the traffic. While Woodruff Avenue, it is, you may say, oh, it's quieter, but however, it is across from Woodruff Avenue Public School. And just because it's not necessarily fast traffic, it is traffic, school buses, pickup, ongoing, that should be considered in terms of the noise study. I understand that the owner has said that they will provide such noise attenuation measures. However, the point of the noise study is to look at that thoroughly. And determine if there are any specific noise attenuation measures which may be required at this site as a result of the specific context. And yeah, I think that's the main concern, but ultimately it is an OP requirement, and that's why staff are remaining firm that this should be included as part of the conditions.
And what's your thoughts on just replacing that with a noise attenuation clause, or sorry, with a noise warning clause on title?
Madam Chair, my concern with having just a noise clause is that, well, I have definitely good faith in the owner's intentions. It is true that, should this project not go forward for whatever reason, and the proposed dwelling does not get built, and it gets sold to another owner with the severance approval still in effect, then they may not choose to put in such noise mitigation measures. And it's really about protecting that and ensuring that, those future conflicts are protected against through a noise study. I understand that the previous approval, which the applicant has mentioned, was from 2021, is not necessarily a recent approval, but however, I'm not in a place to obviously speak to prior approvals done by the committee, but it is my position that, I think that a noise study is warranted, and we should continue to have them as part of the conditions.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Getchin. Mr. White, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering what the maximum provisions that would be required or identified in a noise study that would have to be implemented in a property like this. I can't imagine that there's a noise wall or anything like that that would be proposed.
It's all about the massing. It's all about the massing in the windows and the roof. So what the study might find, well, you should have a complete brick interior or exterior. I mean, at the front of the house. It's all about that massing, and again, the windows, having air conditioning, that's what they're talking about in terms of various kinds of interventions. So the noise study should be able to identify what those building requirements are. But, because the other side of the coin is, if you're building a house off Woodruff Avenue, then you're probably looking at having some of these enhancements in any event. Just because, I'd be mindful of that if I'm building a house. And anyway, it just seems kind of obvious to me, but not necessarily. All right, any other thoughts? Member White, any more comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm inclined to suggest that we have imposed in other situations requirement, for example, to install or have the capability to install air conditioning, double pane windows, that sort of standard construction practice that attenuates noise in locations such as this. So I'm not entirely supportive. I'm not supportive of the concept of a comprehensive noise study in this location.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hindle, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Ms. Getchin, so I understand, so is this a new provision that was added to the new official plan? It's my understanding that this was not previously a requirement on all arterial roads. Are you familiar with how it might have shifted?
No, I'm not sure what the old official plan said about it, but I am, firm on this is the direction for the new official plan, and this is how we've been directed to proceed.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, Madam Chair, I think I would tend to be inclined to agree with Mr. White and agree that while the official plan may be required in this case, I'm very sympathetic to previous decisions fairly recently. I understand under the old official plan, but fairly recently in this exact vicinity. And given that it's a lower traffic portion of Woodruff, I'm willing to risk manage a piece that, as long as we're imposing the requirement of the noise warning and the requirement for provision of air conditioning and the standard kind of procedures, I'd be happy to proceed with that as the alternative.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hindle. Anybody else? I'm seeing no disagreement with it anyway. So. Okay. If that's the case, then what we would be looking at, Ms. Getchon, is the replacement of condition number 10 with the typical wording that we use with regards to a noise warning on title. So I think it still has to be done through a development agreement, though, if I remember correctly. So, but whatever typical one that we would use, we could see about swapping that one out. Any opposition from anybody? No? Okay. So that being said, then there is another condition. It's interesting because I forgot all about raising this one. And it has to do with condition number 6. And Ms. Getchon, you may not be familiar with this one, so I'm kind of calling on either Ms. Clazero or Ms. Kelly to help us out here with this one. We're seeing some new wording on the private approach, right? So the private approach says, the owner or any subsequent owners acknowledges and agrees to obtain a private approach permit. So the issue as a committee that we have is that that's not an actionable clearing condition, right? So what do you actually do to clear something like that? So we've seen previously that in the additional comments section of the planning reports, that often there are some additional notes or for information to the applicant, and so that information winds up under additional comments. Could be it's typically from forestry, but we've seen it from building code services as well. And we saw the engineering comments that came under another application. So my question to you is, if in fact I'm trying to find, just how hard a line we want with the private approach permit. There is a bylaw in any event that is required. So can you tell me and we've seen this on a couple of different applications recently. Can you tell me what the thinking is with regards to clearing that condition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The condition should really be turned into a comment for now. The planning department is currently working with the right-of-way department to come to an agreement with revised wording. But for now, I think the most appropriate route is to go with a comment.
All right, thank you very much. So in that case, we are going to delete the private approach number 6 from the conditions and agree that it should form part of the overall comments in the planning report as opposed to being a condition of development. Anybody opposed? Nope. All right, thank you for that, Ms. Kelly and Ms. Escalzero for coming forward. I think we had another application, or it's going to come back up on that had exactly the same thing. So maybe a note that in terms of fairness, maybe those conditions can be, that condition number 6 or the one related to the private approach can be removed for all applications this evening and put into a comment section and not imposed. I don't know if it's too late to do that. Mr. Garnett, you can tell me how wrong I am, but I'd like to just let that one stand if it's possible to do that. Mr. Garnett?
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe the other item on the agenda is 13 and 14. So it may be forthcoming, but we'll take that as direction.
All right, thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, good. So we didn't miss an earlier one. All right. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so we now have a revised list of conditions, eliminating number 5, 6, and replacing 10 with the noise warning on title. Anything else? All right. Have I gone out to the public? I think I have on this because I looked and we have nobody. Yes, I think we went out to the public on this already and that nobody came forward. So if that's the case, then we, and I'll just give it a minute in case there is somebody out there that I did miss it in terms of addressing the committee on this. No, all right, not seeing anybody. So on the consent application for 236 Woodruff Avenue, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted subject to the revised list of conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have next number 10. Number 10 is for Hartley, 422, 424 Hartley, being for Mr. Cooper. Hello, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, can you join us? Coordinators, do you know if we're having a problem with connection with Mr. Cooper? Ah, there you are. Good evening.
Good evening. I apologize. I lost power this evening, so I'm calling in via my cell phone, which is getting low on battery.
Oh no, I'll make this quick then. I do have to read this to you though and get something from you. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that to be true.
Perfect. Okay, we have no housekeeping amendments and no presentation required. So I'm going to throw it open to the committee members to ask any questions on this application. This is for the front-facing garages. All right. Okay. And we know that staff has some concerns with this. This was an application that was granted in 2022. And that the applicant is now revising the design to retain trees by relocating the driveways. And that in itself then is creating an issue with regards to the front-facing garages. So Ms. Kelly, can you just give us a little bit of history here? And my sense is that the applicant has done quite a bit of work in order to save this tree and to work with staff. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Madam Chair. So the application was first heard last summer, I believe in July 2022. At that time, the applicant was proposing carports that faced the interior lot lines. But that design necessitated the removal of the mature tree in the front yard. Over the course of the past 10 months, the applicant has decided to revise the design now to feature front-facing attached garages, and that also required relocating the driveways to be more internal to the site. So that redesign essentially is able to keep the tree in the front yard that otherwise was proposed to be removed. In terms of staff's position on the application, in my staff report, I indicated some concerns, not full concerns, because we do acknowledge that there are merits to the proposed revision as it relates to the official plan policies with regards to tree protection. And the applicant has made some efforts to try to minimize some of the impacts of having front-facing attached garages.
All right, thank you for that, Ms. Kelly. Does panel members have any questions for any clarification on this? I think it's pretty straightforward. All right, I'm going to go to the public at this point then. I don't have anybody on my speakers list for this item. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? The proposal for front-facing garages at 422 and 424 Hartley Avenue, redesigned to protect some trees, which is, I think, a good objective. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So like I said, I think this is fairly straightforward panel. So all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application for minor variance, Mr. Cooper, is unanimously granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully you get some electricity back soon.
Yes, it's getting chilly in here.
Oh, no. Have you been out for that long? Really? How long have
Since
you been out?
since probably 2:30.
Oh, my stars. Yes, I'm really hoping for you that you get some heat for tonight. Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you
Well,
very
all the
much.
best to you. All the best to you.
Okay, good evening.
Okay. All right. So our next application then is number 11 for 813 Broadview. I'm looking for Mr. Johnson. Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
So I see you have light. This is good.
Yes, I am in Quebec, so
Good.
looking good.
Do need to read to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that is true.
Perfect. So again, no changes to your notice, no presentations. This is a very, very simple application. I'm going to open it up to the committee members. Anybody have any questions? We've seen this type of application over and over. No concerns? Mr. Johnson, have you looked at the, you're familiar with the conditions?
Yep,
That's 6 conditions? Okay,
no
good.
comments.
All right. I don't believe there's anybody here, like nobody on my speakers list. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? Now's your chance. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so the application is granted on the basis of the conditions, of course, and that's unanimous. So thank you very much, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, we're on to number 12 on our list for tonight. That is for 184. You know what? Actually, sorry, I may change my mind here because we wanted a presentation on Merrier. So I'm going to go to instead, if you'll permit me, to 31 Starwood Road. And for that, we have a consent application and a minor variance. And I'm looking for Mr. Alves.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm also without power here, so might not see me very well.
Oh, okay. I'm going to need to read.
I was just concerned I was going to run out of power on my cell phone here, but I'm down to 15%. Yeah.
You're down to 15%. We'll try and get through this and before it's too late. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm. Thank you.
Perfect. So we don't have any presentation required for you on either the consent or the minor variance application. So I'm going to open it up to the committee right now for any questions that they might have. Yes, Ms. Willis, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for staff, and it relates to a condition. I was pleased to see that there's a requirement for a stormwater management brief in this instance that has to demonstrate, and my understanding is that post-development flows cannot exceed pre-development flows. And I'm just, excuse me, just wondering if this is a recent addition to the list of conditions for individual on-site stormwater management provisions within on a lot-by-lot basis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the intent behind this condition was to apply it to City View and Lakeview properties after the long discussion that we had. That was, I think, initiated by a series of applications in the City View area. So based on that stormwater study, this was what the engineers came up with to address stormwater concerns in the City View area. So this will be standard on, I believe, on City View applications, a standard
And
condition.
Is this relatively recently that you've been imposing this condition?
Yes, I believe it was as of February 1st or February 15th. I'd have to go back and look, but early this year, yeah.
Okay, so just from that, I'm very pleased to see it. Just, I guess the point being that at least with the intensification of the area, it will not make the condition, doesn't mean it's going to improve it, but it won't make it any worse in terms of the downstream performance of the ditch system. If it is new, do you know whether or not in an instance that where they've become fairly typical severance applications with the intensification that's going on, whether that is easily achievable? And maybe, I mean, maybe you can't answer that, but are there pretty standard things that can be imposed on a lot by lot basis? Or is there some concern that it's not going to be possible to achieve pre-development flows with this intensification?
I can't comment on that. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. But in areas where there's not stormwater infrastructure, it'll be imposed on those. So as I said, City View is the number of applications we received in City View was what prompted us to review the conditions and include this condition. But other areas may require it as well. But I can't speak to how the condition will be cleared or what the engineers will be looking for in their review to clear it.
So just to take it next step on this, that means that if it turns out that there aren't existing engineering measures that are possible to attenuate to maintain the pre-development flows, that in effect the severance and the variances would not, because it would be subject to that if it turns out it can't be done, then it would fail.
Yeah, if the condition can't be cleared, that's right. Yeah, if the condition can't be cleared, then the consent would be granted.
Okay, so I guess we'll know shortly, since you've been imposing them for a couple of months now, that whether or not this is something that's doable through, I don't know, flow restrictors or something or ponding on lots, that sort of thing. But I'll be very interested to see how this all shakes out. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And Madam Chair, if I may, I just had an interruption in power. So if I disappear, I'll try and come back. But if I'm gone, then that's why.
All right. Thank you very much for letting us know on that. Okay. Mr. Member White, go ahead.
Yeah, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up to Ms. Willis's question, the study that is cited in the planning report identified a program that would require city investment of about $775 million, I think, over a number of years to solve the drainage problem, the ditching problem in City View. Is this condition, and I don't believe it does, but the condition doesn't appear to address the responsibilities for payment of the portion of that amount that's attributable to individual properties in the area when there is a consent, a severance, or an intensification of this nature. My understanding, the study did identify on individual properties, including, I think, this one, the changes, the improvements that are required to achieve the long-term objectives of the municipality in the community with respect to drainage. I'm wondering why we're not imposing a charge as a condition of these consent, or suggesting the imposition of the charge condition on these consents for each new lot to contribute to that cost of the changes, the improvements that are required over time. Is there a reason why we're not doing that?
Ms. Glazero, do you have that information?
I just don't believe we have the authority to impose that. I don't believe we have the authority to do that, to determine the amount.
Madam Chair, if I could just suggest that I have a problem with that, because this essentially is the same as a subdivision approval authority. We have ability to impose whatever conditions we deem that might be appropriate. I'd like to suggest that this would be entirely appropriate, particularly when we know the improvements that are required on each individual lot in order to achieve the objectives of the study. I have no problem suggesting that we have an ability to impose a condition if we deem it appropriate.
All right, thank you, Member White. Ms. Willis.
Madam Chair, I think my recollection has come back since we were chatting about this earlier today. I remember when we were in the committee of the whole meeting discussing this very issue that I raised the question of staff, and the answer at the time is the reason we could not impose a condition is that you'd have to go through a local improvement process and assess on a lot by lot basis everybody that would benefit from it. And the city had determined that that was not appropriate for whatever reason. And so I have to agree with what, based on that earlier comment, what Ms. Scozzaro is saying, that we don't have the authority to impose it without going through a whole process.
All right, thank you. I mean, also to me, the obvious comparison is to the forestry people and the imposition of compensation on the tree, but I believe that that's already embedded in a bylaw, which gives them the authority to impose that. But so Member White, though, so let's get that answer from staff again. Let's get it in writing then. If you know, we had a discussion about it, my recollection was pretty much the way Ms. Willis's was, but let's see if we can't get something in writing from engineering services on that, so that we understand exactly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe I sent a request for that information, and I have yet to receive a reply on it.
Okay, it might be that somebody thought somehow the obligation to respond was negated through the discussion we had, but Mr. Garnett, if you wouldn't mind taking a note of that and seeing whether or not we can get a response to Mr. White's email. And I do remember that one, Member White, you had quite a bit of detail in your email. So thank you. All right.
Mr. Garnett has left the meeting, but I'll make note of that.
All right, thank you. Did we lose him? His phone ran out just like Mr. Alves is about to, and there goes my video again. All right, so with that then, any other questions from the panel before we move on? All right, and I'm just making a note that on the conditions we have that number 9 again about the private approach permit. So we're agreeing to delete that one and to move it into the comments section of the report instead. So that's good. We do have speakers on deck. We have both Ms. Pratt and Ms. Wilson with us this evening. Who would like to go first?
I can go first because my camera is about to run out too. So, or my phone is about to run out too. And we're in the dark. Okay, City View Community Association would like to provide comments on this tonight. Thank you for hearing us, members of the committee and chair. During review of the documents submitted for the February 15th, 2023 hearing, staff identified several instances of non-compliance with the zoning bylaw related to rear yard setbacks, rear yard area, driveway width, and location of the garage in relation to the principal entrance and front lot line. Staff has now indicated that based on the revised site plan, they are satisfied that the proposed attached dwelling are fully compliant with all relevant sections of the zoning bylaw. We hope that this is the case. We'd just like to check and make sure that it is. With respect to the maximum building heights, the applicant's revised submission of February 17th, 2023 indicates that the heights are to be determined. The bylaw allows 8.5 meters. What are the so those are two questions that we have. The trees, we previously had concerns with the removal of trees 6, the linden, and number 7, the sugar maple, and number 8, the white pine. We note that the tree 8 has now been protected, but it seems inconceivable that a tree that on a boundary of a lot line would need to be removed. It's right on the lot line. They need the neighbor's permission to take it down, that sugar maple. So these new builds should have smaller footprints to allow these trees to remain between the properties. I'll let Ms. Pratt go ahead with the infrastructure part. Jill?
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
With respect to 31 Starwood, the topographical plan shows existing houses constructed on a crest that slopes mostly to the rear of the property. This is common in city view as the rock bed and drainage issues were concerned with original construction. Therefore, many houses were raised and backfilled. The plans show that this slope will be incorporated with the new large builds, which could create new runoff drainage issues for adjacent and rear neighbors, especially since this build is so large, covering an area of 43% of the lot. There are now 2 large builds west of this property. These new builds have inadequate drainage, and they've created flooding issues on Starwood Road in this location. Resident complaints to the city are currently being addressed, and we send a picture of the 2 houses that are next to this property. Another concern is the flat roof, which is not common in our area. Where does the drainage from these roofs go? When is it collected? Where? And how is it dispensed? We've been assured by the developer that it would not go into the storm sewer system, but we would like to know more about flat roofs. We note that a proper drainage plan is required prior to construction, taking into account the existing conditions. We hope this takes into account the average grade of the entire property in this case. Also, with respect to condition number 2, which talks about stormwater, there's no mention of the requirement to reinstate the ditches, and we hope that that can be added to condition number 2. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pratt. So back to Ms. Glazero for just a minute. So back and to that condition, I do recall that there was a portion in that provision that did talk about the reinstatement of, just to read it again. So this is just, so all this requires is a brief. And is the intent then through that brief that they would identify the type of works that may be required to restore or ensure that the property drained properly? Is that it? So, because I do remember what Ms. Pratt is talking about, there was more detail about that in the original conditions, and now that's gone.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So at the last paragraph of the comment on stormwater management, pardon me.
Okay, let me get to that.
Sorry,
right, go ahead.
The last paragraph of the stormwater management comment notes that ditch reinstatement requirement gets imposed at the building permit phase. So
I see.
yeah, that's why
okay.
it's not a condition.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we've got quite a bit of material here to cover all of that then, because I was looking at all the conditions plus the brief plus the requirement. Okay, so I think we're good. If this doesn't cover it, I don't know what will. That's I guess my point. That's it's like, all right. And other comments was about the trees. So Ms. Wilson, just sorry, I'm looking for, where is our forester? We lost Ms. Have we lost our forester?
I'm here, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. Sorry, maybe I was looking for. I
Ms.
was looking
Young.
for some. Yes, I was looking for Ms. Young. Okay, so on the comment about the footprints and the being perhaps able to retain or save, protect, whatever, some additional trees. Can you just respond to some of the comments that we've heard from Ms. Wilson on that?
Absolutely. So as Ms. Wilson mentioned, we're very happy to see that the developer was able to redesign the dwelling to allow for retention of tree number 8 in the front. The buildings are compliant with the rear yard and side yard setbacks. So tree number 6 in the rear yard, the consulting arborist deemed this tree not retainable, and the city agrees with that opinion because of its condition as well as its proximity to the proposed development. And the tree that's on the lot line, tree number 7, the sugar maple, it is within a meter or just under a meter of the excavation. So that tree would not be able to make it through construction, and the neighbor has consented to its removal. And again, that setback in the side yard is compliant with the zoning bylaw.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Murray, for that that explanation and overview. Okay, so I'm going to make a call for anybody else who might have an interest in the application to come forward. Is there anyone? Okay, so not seeing anybody come forward. And we've talked about the conditions. We're removing number 9. I think we can go to a vote on consent first and then the minor variance. So members.
Sorry, can I just speak to condition number 7? Same thing about
yes, you can.
noise.
Yes, go ahead.
The noise attenuation study. Just wondering what triggers that in that neighborhood, given that it's an established, quiet neighborhood. I'm just wondering why one is required.
All right, so Ms. Glazero, can you explain the that condition then for us in this context, number 7?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pardon me, I'm going to need to look back into it a little bit further, but I remember discussing this with the EITs, and I'd have to go back through my email and just double check about the noise study. If you give me a moment, I can do that.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thanks.
And I'm just trying to look to see myself then. What is it that triggers?
The airport.
That? Is it the airport in this case? Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Runway,
it's aircraft noise.
We're right over the path.
Oh, I see. All right, so look no further, Ms. Glazero. That's what it is. It is. It's not arterial noise. It's it has to do with the aircraft zone.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So can we go to a vote now, I think?
Just one minor thing as well. Just in regards to tree number 8, that tree suffered some significant damage today. So I don't know if we can actually retain that tree, but we'll assess that later. Those a number of branches that broke off that tree today.
All right, that's a good point. There would
Which
have
is
been
unfortunate.
tree damage.
We had, yeah.
Okay.
But we'll assess
I'm sure you won't be alone, Mr. Alves, in terms of trying to work through some of these tree retention issues. Other properties will be affected as well. So I think I'd like to just approve it the way it is today, and then I think good rationale and clear thinking is going to help us work through whatever other refinements are required on the basis of what may have happened today. I'm going to go to a vote now. So all those in favor on the consent, please. All right, so for the record, the consent application is granted subject to the conditions, save and accept number 9 on the minor variances. They are very minor. Oh, Mr. Member White.
Madam Chair, I dissent on the consent application.
Sorry, I missed that. So, all right. And okay, can you give us a reason then that you're dissent?
I'm not convinced that this and other similar proposals for intensification in this neighborhood satisfy the provisions of section 5124 of the Planning Act. And that's with respect to the adequacy of stormwater drainage system in the area. The study that is mentioned in the planning report clearly identified that intensification of this nature creates ditch infill issues that are working against the maintenance of drainage in the area, and the intensification that's permitted increases the runoff due to greater imperviousness. So I'm not convinced that this is consistent with section 5124 of the Planning Act.
All right, thank you, Member White, for that. Just trying to think though, on the 4 tests, I mean that provision that you're talking about is actually in non-compliance with a piece of legislation as opposed to being the 4 tests for an approval on it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not the 4 tests with respect to minor variance. It's the test with respect to consent must satisfy the provisions of section 5124 in terms of all of those factors. And the one factor that I'm suggesting is not met here is the adequacy of local services.
Okay, interesting. That's a different angle from you, Mr. White on this one. Okay. I'm going to go to the second vote on the minor variances. All those in favor? Okay, so we have 4 members in support with Member White dissenting. And Member White, are we using the same rationale? Member White, you're on mute.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's my view that the variances requested are not minor, notwithstanding the conformity with the principles of the official plan. They're not, the applications aren't consistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw with respect to the longstanding provisions of relating to lot width, minimum lot width and minimum lot area. It's not consistent with the character of the community, which is, as the residents in the neighborhood know, is very much larger lots. They're not minor, not desirable for the appropriate development of the community and is currently regulated by city zoning policy.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, that said, though, both applications are granted. So I don't think we need anything further on that. So thank you, Mr. Alves. I do hope you get your electricity back sometime soon. Good luck to you this evening.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, we have Mary. Yes, we have 12. No, sorry, that's the ward. 18 or 184 Marier Avenue, and I'm looking for Mr. Vedikit. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
All right, I'm going to need to read to you and then we can go from there. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I affirm that to be true.
Perfect. Okay, so no notice requirements, changes, housekeeping changes required. We are going to ask for a presentation from you on this, and if you could sort of walk us through what's on the property now, what's being proposed, and maybe a little bit of your consultation with the neighborhood.
Okay. Yes, so there's my presentation. So basically what is on the property at 184 Marier right now is a 2-story detached single-family dwelling. We are proposing to convert the existing 2-story dwelling to a 6-unit low-rise apartment dwelling unit. This is permitted by the zoning, the R4UA-C. But we are requesting some minor variances, basically to legalize the existing conditions of the house that we're converting. As well, our lot is irregular in size. So if we go to the next slide. So the site plan along our front lot line faces north on Marier Avenue. We're requesting a front yard reduction because for the sole purpose of legalizing the front facade of the existing building. This will allow the owner to do some improvements on the existing facade, and the addition that we're proposing will be set back farther than the existing building. If we go clockwise to the east side property line, we're not requesting any variances on this side of the property. We were originally, but at the request of the planning department, we needed
clear unobstructed access to the garbage storage and the bike storage at the back of the lot. So I reduced the addition on that side. In the rear yard, we're asking for a small reduction on the rear yard setback, but this still allows for amenity and soft landscaping requirements to be met, as well as the garbage and bike storage I already talked about. And then finishing with the west side property line, again, we're asking for a minor variance, basically to legalize the existing conditions of where the original house was located on the property. If we go to the next slide, I'll just go through quickly through the floor plans in the interest of time. So we're proposing 1 unit in the basement. Next slide. One bedroom unit in the front of the ground floor and one bedroom unit in the rear of the ground floor. Next slide. Same on the second floor, one bedroom unit in the front, and then one bedroom unit in the back. Next slide. And then on the third floor, we're proposing a 2-bedroom unit. Next slide. So again, on the front facade, we're keeping the existing building, but giving it some TLC and improving its appearance dramatically. The new addition will be set back from this 2 meters from the front lot line. And we'll tie in with the finishes. All the finishes will tie in together with between the new and the old. Next slide. This is along the east side, where we're not proposing any minor variances to achieve that unobstructed travel from the garbage storage to the curb. Next slide. The rear elevation, this is faces south, and where we have most of the windows we're proposing for the units. It's important to note that although this is a 3-story addition, it is below the allowable building height requirement for this area. Next slide. And then this is the west side elevation. Due to the proximity of the west side lot line, we're not allowed to have any windows on this side. So it will be clad in non-combustible cladding. The only windows remaining are grandfathered from the existing building. Just to summarize, we worked very hard with the planning staff on this revision for them to issue a report that they had no concerns with the revised application, and that this application, we're confident it meets the 4 tests, that the minor variances are minor in nature. We're basically only asking for these variances because to legalize existing conditions and to deal with the irregularity of the lot size. It's desirable for the appropriate development of the lot and the structure. And we believe this construction will have no impact on the surrounding areas and very little impact on the neighboring properties. And this application is within the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the official plan. And that concludes my presentation for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vidicott. Are there any questions?
Be nice, Dave.
So the only thing, I'm thinking I'm hearing something. That must be Mr. Pritchard's.
Mr. Pritchard's here, yes.
Yeah, I think I just heard something through. That's okay. So, Mr. Bellicat, in terms of your consultation then with your neighbors, can you tell me a little bit about that?
I have not consulted with them in person, but we received letters ahead of the November 2nd, 2022 hearing. And I did analyze those letters in detail, some of the concerns of the neighbors and the community association, and that was taken into account with this revised design.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bellicat, with that. All right, so members of the panel, any questions? Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Willis.
I'm just curious, a question for staff about the grandfathering of the windows on the side where windows are no longer permitted according to limiting distances. I'm just getting over COVID, by the way. I'm just curious as to why we see many applications where when we're doing a severance, particularly maybe splitting a semi-detached into 2 units, we have to comply with current building code restrictions, and we have to do limiting distances and all these sorts of things. And I'm just wondering if it's an easy answer, why there's a difference between this, where if it doesn't meet limiting distances under the building code, how an existing building can be grandfathered to permit the non-conformity with the building code to continue.
Through you, Madam Chair. I didn't receive specific comments from our building code services staff with respect to the limiting distance. So I can't speak to whether or not there's grandfathering in under the building code, unfortunately.
Okay, it made me
but that would be reviewed as part of the building permit. So the elevation drawings would be reviewed. And if the building code zoning plans examiners or the building code officer determines that windows are not permitted on that facade, the applicant would be required to revise the elevations if that's the stance that they take.
It could be, I know that you can do self-closing windows and you can put in Georgian glass and all sorts of things that bring it up to date. But I just was really curious about the comment made by the applicant about it being grandfathered. Just curious about it. Thank you.
Actually, that's a great topic and maybe one that we should have a presentation by Building Code Services at some point, so we understand those separation distance and what, So maybe that's something, Ms. Byers, I could ask you just to take that down as a note for maybe further discussion with the planning staff at some point, so we can get that clarity. Now I see, Mr. Wright, you raised your hand really quickly while Member Willis was talking about this issue. Did you raise your hand because you have an answer for us? Mr. Wright?
Yes. No, I don't have any further comments on this application.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Can I ask you to mute your microphone, please?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. All right. So if there's no other questions, then I can, Member White, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, I just want to apologize. I left the meeting for a few minutes there because I had a power outage issue. I'm back.
All right. I did notice, and normally when you blank out, we see something on the screen. I didn't see anything, and I thought, oh, okay. So did we lose? And then I was like, I'm back. So thank you. All right. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to go to my speakers list because that's the next thing I do. On number 12. Okay. Anybody else? All right. So Mr. Pritchard, you're number 1 on my list of speakers. So go ahead, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I would start off with a letter from Mr. Michael Wright that was sent to the committee 23rd/031. It says in it, variances requested are based upon comments from planning staff as well as the community association and neighbors. We hold the property directly south of 184. Nobody contacted us. Any of the neighbors we have talked to, or the property owners, both on Dagmar and Montfort, nobody has talked to them. I have been in touch with Mr. Chris Greenshields of the Vanier Community Association. They have issues with this as well. I believe he directly contacted, or the Community Association directly contacted this thing. As for this minor variance, they are asking for, if you let me just, they're asking for 1,000 square feet of leeway. That is not, to my mind, a minor variance. I would also go back to Mr. White's earlier comment about things fitting into the neighborhood. There is no parking anywhere here. On Montfort, we have 3 legal spaces. We have people from other parts of the neighborhood parking in those spots. Dagmar is a very short street, which won't accommodate this sort of parking. This is overbuilding. Our major concern, though, and we've discussed it in a number of, or rather, you have discussed it in a number of things this evening, is water. The roof, I don't think the city appreciates the geotechnical aspect of the area. It is shale underneath a few feet of soil. I know that a construction they're doing about 100 feet away, they've been pumping water out of the excavation since early November. So you can judge the amount of water that's coming down. Our concern is, given the roof size, if you go with the National Building Code criteria, I believe it's 1,700 liters per hour. So given the size, I believe Miss Kelly puts the new backyard at about, what, 45 square meters, did you say? So a French drain isn't going to accommodate that, particularly in the wintertime when the snow load starts melting. You know, as far as there are other matters that I could bring up. Unfortunately, they are not quite within the jurisdiction of this committee. They're more of engineering. So, you know, if the illustrations, and this is one of the things that my comments with Chris Greenshields, excuse me, the illustrations, the site plans that Mr. Valiquette showed us this evening, nobody has received them. We can't comment on them. We can't decide on them. I would therefore, if it is within my purview, recommend, well, I don't want to see this go ahead as is anyway, but I would recommend an adjournment until such time as all parties have complete and update information. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pritchard. I do have a question for you, though. So we, at the very outset of the of hearing on an application, we do go through a signposting declaration, which we got from Mr. Valiquette today. Did you see a sign on the property? Because it has to be posted for some time prior to the.
Is there a sign?
Absolutely, it's been there all along.
Yes, there is a sign at the front.
Okay, so there is a number, I think, if you have concerns or questions about what's going on. I mean, the purpose of the sign is to make people aware that something is in fact happening on the property. Did you try calling the number that's available on the sign, or did
I would point out to you, madam, it may be a matter of language. Mr. Wright is saying that we were approached. We weren't. That's another matter altogether. You know, people on the street that are abutting the property may not have been up there to see a sign with a number on it. It is incumbent upon the builders, the proponents, to approach us rather than us seek them out, in my opinion.
Well, we're going to find out a little bit more about that then. So I see that Mr. Wright is here, so we can ask him. So Mr. Wright, can you tell us a little bit about the consultation that you undertook?
My understanding is we circulated all the drawings and paperwork as required for the committee and also to the planning staff. We received comments from planning staff. We also received comments from the public dealing with the existing proposal and the drawings that were attached. And subsequently, Mr. Valaket, who was the designer and the draftsman, had to adjust or revise, as the case may be, all the drawings, and to ensure that we met the comments made by either planning staff or the public before we made a second submission, which we did. And we sent all that material back to city staff, saying this is what, in response to your questions and the comments from the public at large, these are how the drawings have been revised, et cetera, and the variances revised accordingly. I never heard.
So Mr. Wright,
Oh,
can
sorry.
you tell me, well, can you just tell me exactly how the public was engaged on the file?
I would say Mr. Valaket would be a better answer than I would. I was strictly dealing with the official plan zoning and the drawings and how they fit, et cetera, and whether they meet the controls or the direction of the Planning Act, controls direction of the official plan as such. But I did not have a direct contact with the public. That was Mr. Valaket that I understood did that.
All right, thank
Sorry.
you. Mr. Valaket, can you please provide us with some information on that?
I did
Oh,
not.
sorry. Oh,
Hi.
go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. So I received a letter from the neighbor across the street of 184 Marier, and I received a letter from the Community Association of Vanier from Mr. Greenshield, and those were what were taken into account with this revised design.
All right. Did the community association ask for a presentation or for you to attend a meeting or any of that?
No, there was none of that mentioned in the letter.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Valaket. All right. Anything else, Mr. Pritchard?
Yes, has the hydro situation been resolved?
Okay,
That is a
not an
condition.
issue.
That is not an issue. So Hydro gives us the guidelines in which we have to proceed to ensure the wiring, et cetera, and electrical access to the house is dealt with. It's their guidelines, we follow them. It's just, it's a matter.
Yeah, so that's a technical commenting agency, Mr. Pritchard, and they have to be dealt with as part of any development. This committee doesn't deal with it unless they specifically ask for changes, specifically have concerns about a proposal that affects their services.
Well, I would come back to Mr. Valaket and Mr. Wright and again express our concerns about water and to Ms. Kelly. We are at a lower elevation than the property in question. If this water is not properly drained to the front of the house, you will notice it's a sloping roof sloping to the south. If this water is not properly dealt with, we're going to have erosion in our yard and we're going to have flooding.
And there is a building permit process that requires a grading and drainage, and that is dealt with at that particular point in time. So thank you.
I have little faith in the city.
All right. Well, so Mr. Pritchard, I'm going to move on to our next speaker at this point, who is Mr. Heisler. Do we have Mr. Heisler?
Madam Chair, he's not on the call.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to make a general call. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? Okay. Is there any further questions then by the committee based on some of what you've heard or anything else that you'd like to know? All right. I just have one then, going back to Ms. Kelly. So in terms of the way this development fits into the rest of its varying areas, did you have a chance to look at it and ensure its compatibility with its surroundings?
Yes, Madam Chair. I visited the site in fall 2022 when the application first came to the Committee of Adjustment. Also note that, as I think Mr. Valaket noted in his presentation, in terms of height, the proposal is under what's permitted as a right for a low-rise apartment. There's a lot of official plan policy direction to permit this sort of ground-oriented development. And in terms of the existing
just a minute. Mr. Wright, can you, okay, good. I think it just did. Go ahead, because I was having trouble hearing you. Sorry, Ms. Kelly, keep going.
Oh, no worries. So as I was mentioning, the official plan provides a lot of policy direction for this sort of ground-oriented intensification in urban areas such as this. So this is in the inner urban transect. Specifically, the official plan provides policy direction for smaller lots that specifically have like a higher lot coverage and higher floor area ratios. It also speaks to having buildings with minimized side yard setbacks, just some of the kind of built form characteristics that are planned for the urban area. In terms of the existing context, it's my opinion that the proposal is compatible with existing development.
All right, thank you for that. And I just want to just get back to Mr. Pritchard for just a minute, because I just found, we read these things, but we read so much that sometimes we forget that it's there. But there are engineering comments that are tied to this application, make it very clear that a grading and servicing plan needs to be prepared at the time of the building permit application, that a grading and drainage and servicing plan will also be reviewed at the same time, including surface stormwater runoff. So there's lots in here that already tells us that the issues that you raised with us today are on their radar and are part of the development process. So I'm really hoping that we don't have an issue then, based on all that I see in terms of the work that they do. So, okay. If there's nothing else, then I guess, folks, we can go to a vote on this proposal. So all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. I will say I had a few reservations. I do have some concerns about it looks like overbuilding on the site, but I'm feeling comfortable based on some of the answers that we got about controlling some of what could be some of the adverse elements that we'd have to deal with as part of that development. But I'm actually looking forward to seeing this one done, just so I can have a look at it myself and see how well this works, because it is a high form of intensification within the neighborhood. And so I'm going to wish you good luck and hope that it does blend in well, and that it functions well within the neighborhood as well. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. That, panel members, brings us to the end of our agenda. So all those, no, but what I need is a motion to adjourn. Ms. Willis, thank you, and seconded by member Hindle. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Just wanted to say, so where is Ms. Getch?